Hey guys, there's a quick little thing I want to share with you today about how to change your feelings, how to change your emotional state quickly and on command. In the same way that you can just change your clothes. So if your t-shirt is dirty, you can take it off and put on another one. You can do the same thing with your emotions. There's a technique I'm going to show you to take off an emotion that you don't like and put on an emotion that you do like. So you want to feel motivated, you want to feel focused, you want to feel peaceful. Like, you can do that, you can put that on. And the technique that I'm going to show you, once you get good at it, you can do an emotional shift in like 10 or 20 seconds. Probably at first it will take a little bit longer, but once you get good at it, you can do it fairly quickly. Now, there are only two things that you need to understand in order to make this whole thing work. Number one is to let go of what you call logic and accuracy. If you believe that your emotional states are only a response to an external situation, this is not going to work for you. For example, if you believe that you can only feel peaceful when there is peace around you, that's going to be a problem, because what we'll be doing is making ourselves feel peaceful or motivated or focused or whatever it is that you want to feel when there's no logical external reason to feel that way. This technique relies on understanding that you can change how you feel on the inside without changing anything on the outside. You have to understand that how you feel has a lot to do with your interpretation of events and not the events themselves. Now, second point, you have to understand the humongous power of imagination your brain has, and also the capacity that the brain has to influence itself directly through that imagination. You have to believe that imagination can change your physical state and your emotional state. And I mean, that's not just a belief, that is a fact. For example, when you are dreaming and your imagination is at peak capacity, if you have a nightmare, that can easily accelerate your heart rate. So something that was happening only on your head had a direct impact on how you feel, on your emotions. And that is exactly what we'll be tapping into. Now, let me show you how this technique works by doing a little exercise with you so that you deeply understand the power of imagination. So we have 5 senses, right? We can see, we can touch, we can hear, we can smell, and we can taste. We're very used to imagining things visually. The other 4, we don't use them as often. But the important thing to understand is that there are layers to how deeply you can imagine something. For example, imagine an elephant, and if you close your eyes, this is going to be easier for you to understand. If you imagine an elephant, you can see it. But if you go deeper, if you zoom in into what you are imagining, if you start adding detail to it, you can, for example, imagine the texture of the elephant, its wrinkles. You can imagine its deep, dark eyes. You can imagine the sunlight hitting the elephant and how it shines. You can imagine the dry grass that it's walking on. You can also imagine some of the background trees and some of the birds that might be sitting on those branches. You can imagine the bright blue color of the sky. And you can keep zooming in and adding more detail to this thing that you're imagining. And the more you do it, the more real it becomes. Now, you can reach the same level of detail with all your other senses. For example, with hearing, you could imagine the sound that those birds are making and how the wind is blowing. But you can do some other really cool things with your imagination. So for example, try this. You can imagine very accurately the sound of your mother's voice calling for your name. Pause the video and try it if you want. You can clearly hear it, and not just your name, but you can even try to imagine full sentences. And it's gonna feel very, very real. And I find it really interesting how accurately you can imagine that. And you can do the exact same thing with all the other senses. So as you can see, you can go really deeply into how clearly you can imagine all these things. The cool thing is that you can also deeply imagine feelings, and this is where I teach you the technique. You can imagine how it feels to be motivated, or how it feels to be focused, or how it feels to be peaceful, or whatever it is that you want to feel. Now, the thing is that when you first imagine it, at first you might only feel it a little bit. Like when you saw the elephant, what you have to do, as we were doing before, is to keep zooming in. You have to keep giving detail into that feeling. For example, if you want to start feeling motivated or excited about a project that you're working on, start to put detail into everything about it. Like, how does your chest feel? Where exactly is it that you feel that excitement? What about the rest of your body? How does it feel? And not just try to imagine that through words. Like when we were imagining the elephant, you were not doing it through words, right? You were not thinking about a tree and grass and birds and all that stuff. Like, you were just feeling it. You were just visualizing, not through words, but it was just happening. So we have to do the same things here. You just have to imagine those feelings, those emotions, those sensations directly. You can also visualize what you would do if you were feeling that way. How would you act? If you want to, you can even let yourself think a little bit, like what kind of thoughts you would have if you were in that mental state. And what you have to do is simultaneously imagine all these things and also observe how they feel. And then you just have to stay there for some time. And then what will happen as you keep zooming in and bathing yourself in those emotions is that slowly that will start to become a reality of how you're actually feeling right now. And you will have successfully transmuted your emotional state. And you can do that with any feeling that you want. One thing that I would recommend you is that if you are doing this because you want to feel motivated or excited about a project that you're working on because you want to be more productive, I would recommend you that once you reach that emotional state, to get to work as soon as possible. Because especially at the beginning, when you're not proficient with this technique, it is possible that once you get out of it, it is possible that it could vanish quickly and you return to the state that you were in before. So if there's an end goal to your feelings, act on them as soon as possible. Over time, this can become a habit or a skill that you can master, and you might be able to shift through your emotions way faster and also hold on to them way longer. But one last thing that I would say is that this is a temporary patch. If you're consistently feeling like there is something off in your life, there probably is. What I'm describing right here is not a guide on how to ignore the problems in your life. Sometimes we feel a certain way because our brains or our minds are trying to tell us something. Sometimes feelings and emotions act as an alarm that there is something wrong. So do not use this trick to just like turn off the alarm. Listen to the alarm and do whatever it is required to fix the core issue that made the alarm go off in the first place. If what you're struggling with is with your performance and working harder and being more motivated, I would recommend you to go watch a video that I posted a couple days ago. I'll put it on screen right now because at the end of that video, I shared a few things related to this topic that I think you will find very, very insightful. So click here to go watch it. Also, if you are new, subscribe because I post videos like this very often, and that's it. I'll see you on the next video. Take care. Have a great life. Peace.